Yeah, I mean, I give all of that credit to my dad. He's taught me a lot of things and how to, you know, show up the right way and showcase yourself the right way and give a great example, first example of yourself. Yeah, and I feel like he's driven that into me and my brother's heads pretty.
What have been some of the preliminary conversations you've had with your father about what's expected in the NBA and what you can expect to hear?
Bronny crosses line with Luka. Owner drops final warning. This wasn't a rookie mistake. It wasn't a simple on-court scuffle or a heated trash talk exchange. This was the moment the entire NBA had been quietly dreading. The ignition of a fire that could burn down a franchise's future. The son of a legend stepping onto the league's biggest stage and in one volatile instant taking aim at its most unstoppable force. The fallout was immediate, seismic, and it came not from the commissioner's office, but from an owner's private suite, delivered in a tone so cold it sent a shiver through the entire league. This is the story of the night Bronny James went too far. Luka Dončić reached his breaking point, and the most powerful ultimatum of the season changed everything. The arena was electric, a typical Wednesday night showdown that had somehow morphed into a must-watch event. It wasn't about playoff seeding or a historic rivalry. No, the buzz was singular, focused on one player stepping onto the court wearing a familiar name, but carrying an entirely unprecedented weight: Bronny James. His journey, scrutinized under a microscope no other rookie in history has ever endured, had reached its latest, most pressurized chapter, a matchup against the Dallas Mavericks and their generational maestro, Luka Dončić. For weeks, the narrative had been soft, almost protective, the feel-good story of a father's dream, the triumph over adversity, the hard-earned minutes. The league and its broadcast partners framed it as the next chapter in a legacy. But legacy is a fragile thing, and on the hardwood, it can shatter in an instant. The game itself was a blowout in the making. Luka was in full command, a chess master 3 moves ahead of everyone, dissecting defenses with a frustrating, almost bored brilliance. He was hitting step-back threes from the logo, feathering passes through impossible windows, and drawing fouls with the veteran savvy that makes defenders want to scream. For 3 quarters, it was the Luka Dončić show, a one-man demonstration of why he's a perennial MVP candidate. Bronny, for his part, was playing hard. He was hustling on defense, moving without the ball, doing the little things coaches love. But he was also a rookie, caught in the tornado of Luka's genius, a step slow on rotations, a fraction of a second late on closeouts. The scoreboard told a brutal story. Then came the 4th quarter, the so-called garbage time where stars rest and narratives are sometimes born. Luka, having put up a casual 30-point triple-double, was still on the floor, padding stats, getting his rhythm. Bronny, hungry for a moment, for any moment that wasn't just about being LeBron's son, saw an opportunity. On a broken play, Luka drove to the basket, his path cleared. Bronny, coming from the weak side, went for the chase-down block, a move famously patented by his father. He missed the ball entirely, crashing into Luka and sending the superstar sprawling to the floor. It was a hard, clumsy, but arguably clean play, a rookie going for a highlight in a lost game. The whistle blew, a common foul. Luka popped up quickly, a flash of irritation on his face, but he brushed it off, walking to the free-throw line. That should have been it. A footnote in a blowout. But something snapped. As Luka prepared to shoot his first free throw, Bronny, standing at the top of the key, was caught by the courtside microphone. He muttered something, shaking his head. It was inaudible to the broadcast initially, but Luka heard it. He missed the free throw, a rare occurrence. He grabbed the rebound from his own miss, put the ball on the floor, and as he turned to reset, he locked eyes with Bronny. The words were exchanged in a tense, private huddle of bodies under the basket. Later, lip readers and enhanced audio would tell the tale. Bronny, frustrated, had apparently said, "Not so easy without the whistle, huh?"
Luka's response was a cold, dismissive smile and a retort that cut deep. "Go ask your dad how to play defense." The tension was palpable. Teammates moved in. Officials hovered. Play resumed, but the air had been poisoned. For the next 2 minutes, every screen, every bump, every loose ball between the two was charged with a hostility that felt personal. It culminated in a chaotic scramble for a rebound. Luka, using his size, boxed Bronny out with a forceful, legal shove. Bronny, off balance, stumbled backwards. As he fell, his arms swung out and his hand caught Luka square across the jaw. It wasn't a punch, it was a desperate, flailing swipe, but the contact was clear, and the sound of it echoed in the suddenly silent arena. The whistles screamed. Teammates rushed in. Luka stood stock still, touching his jaw, his eyes wide not with pain, but with pure, unadulterated disbelief. He looked at Bronny, then at the referees, and simply pointed to his face. The review was instant. The officials huddled around the monitor. The arena's giant screen replayed the awkward, ugly swipe in slow motion from 5 different angles, and in that suspended animation, the entire narrative of Bronny James's rookie year evaporated. This was no longer about legacy or heart. This was about a line being crossed, violently and in front of millions. The head official walked to the scorer's table. After review, his voice boomed, the personal foul on James is upgraded to flagrant foul type 2. He is ejected from the game. The roar from the crowd was a mix of shock and outrage. Bronny, head down, made the long walk to the locker room, his jersey already being photoshopped onto memes across the internet. But the real drama wasn't on the court. It was in the owner's suite, where a decision was being made that would send shockwaves far beyond the final score.
He talked about the nepotism critique that he has received. And he said, being LeBron James' son comes with perks, but it also comes with pressure. Well, that's not what he said, right? He basically, he stepped up to speak about it because you guys have been giving Bronny a hard time.
That's why I got fined all the time. I didn't give a fuck. That's one of the reasons I sold most of the team because
why did you sell it?
To compete now with the new collective bargaining agreement, you see all these teams building
While the
real estate,
referees were still
casinos,
making
and
their
all these
decision,
big
the
real estate
camera,
empires.
as if
I'm like,
guided
that's
by
not me.
fate, cut away from the replay and panned to the luxury suites. It landed on Mark Cuban. The Dallas Mavericks owner wasn't celebrating a likely win. He wasn't even watching the referee review. He was staring, stone-faced, at the court below, his phone pressed to his ear. His expression was unreadable, but his body language was a masterclass in controlled fury, a sharp, rigid posture, a jaw clenched so tight it looked painful. He didn't yell, he didn't gesture, he just listened, his eyes fixed on the spot where Luka had been struck. The broadcasters, picking up on the mood, went quiet. That 5-second shot of Cuban said more than any rant ever could. The message was clear. This wasn't just another foul, this was an event. In the locker room after the game, the expected script was not followed. Luka Dončić, usually affable and often playful with the media, sat at his stall with a towel over his head for several minutes before addressing reporters. When he did, the charm was gone. "It's basketball. Things happen," he started, his voice flat. "But you play the game the right way. You play with respect. There is a line. A physical play is one thing. What happened, that is not basketball. I have nothing more to say about it." He took no further questions, his dismissal absolute. His teammate, veteran leader Kyrie Irving, was less guarded. "We protect our family out there. Luka is our brother. When you see someone take a shot like that at the heart of your team, it wakes something up in you. The league will handle it, but more importantly, we will remember it." The "we will remember it" line was delivered with a chilling finality, a promise of a grudge that would extend beyond this one night. But the real explosion happened not in the arena, but in the digital coliseum. Before the final buzzer had even sounded, the clip was everywhere. Not just the swipe, but the entire sequence. The chase-down foul, the muttered words, the box out, the flailing arm. It was cut, edited, slowed down, zoomed in on, and set to dramatic music within minutes. The hashtag #BronnyCrossTheLine began trending globally. The basketball internet fractured into warring factions. One side, led by a vocal group of fans and media personalities, eviscerated Bronny. Entitled rookie, legacy privilege, can't handle the real NBA, flooded the comment sections. Memes compared his awkward swipe to his father's iconic chasedown blocks, the contrast used as a brutal punchline. LeBron would have made the block, read one viral post. Bronny just made a mistake, a foul, and an assault charge, read another. The other side rushed to a defense that often felt more damaging than the criticism. Luka was baiting him all night. It was an accident. Look how off balance he was. The media is blowing this up because of his name. This defensive stance inadvertently confirmed the gravity of the incident. You don't mobilize such fervent defenses for a minor event. Then came the industry voices. Former players turned analysts didn't hold back. On talk shows the very next morning, the tone was one of profound disappointment. "You're a rookie. Your job is to be seen and not heard, to earn your stripes," barked one Hall of Famer. "You don't get to come into this league and put your hands on a face like Luka Dončić's over a little trash talk. That's a privilege you haven't earned." Another pointedly said, "This isn't USC anymore. This isn't the Summer League. Every action here has $1 million consequence." He just cost himself, and more importantly, his team, a lot of goodwill. Amidst the noise, one voice was conspicuously, terrifyingly silent: LeBron James. The king offered no post-game tweet, no Instagram story of support, no cryptic emojis. His silence was a black hole, sucking in all the speculation. Was he furious at his son, ashamed, planning a counterstrike? The absence of his normally omnipotent social media voice amplified the crisis. It suggested this was beyond a quick PR fix. This was family business, and it was bad. Meanwhile, in Dallas, the machinery was turning. Reports, leaked to trusted insiders, began to surface. The Mavericks front office was furious. They were compiling a formal video dossier to send to the league office, not just of the flagrant foul, but of the entire proceeding sequence, arguing it showed a pattern of targeted disrespect. They were pushing for a severe, multi-game suspension. But the most chilling report came from a well-connected league insider on a national podcast just 12 hours after the game. "This isn't just about a suspension. I'm told Mark Cuban himself is preparing to make a call, not to the league office, to the very top of BRONNY James's franchise. This is about to move from a basketball issue to a business one. And when owners start talking to owners, the rules change." The stage was set. The public had tried and convicted Bronny in the court of social media. The players had issued their warnings. The analysts had doled out their scorn. Now, the powers that be, the men who write the checks that fund this entire universe, were preparing to enter the chat. The final warning was being drafted, not by a coach, not by the commissioner, but an owner who felt his most precious asset had been disrespected in the most fundamental way. The basketball world held its breath, waiting for the other shoe to drop, knowing it wouldn't be a shoe at all. It would be a hammer.
I think he's right. I think Bronny has handled the critics very well. Anytime that you're in the public eye in any capacity, you're going to have critics. This just goes along with the territory. It is not something that anyone is exempt from. You can be in movies, you could be in TV, you could be in sports, you can be in any kind of entertainment, you could, whatever it is that you do, the comment section is going to have its thoughts. And that's the way that it goes. You can't avoid it, and you can't control what people say about you. All you can control.
Yeah. Yes, sir.
The news broke not with a formal press release, but through a calculated leak to the most influential reporter in the NBA ecosystem. The story dropped at the peak of the morning debate cycle, ensuring maximum impact. The headline was stark: Mavericks Cuban delivers final warning to Bronny James's franchise over Luka incident. The details, sourced from high-ranking officials within both organizations, were specific and damning. According to the report, Mark Cuban had placed a call directly to the majority owner of Bronny's team less than 2 hours after the final buzzer. The conversation was described as brief, blunt, and borderline hostile. Cuban, a billionaire known for his passionate and sometimes volcanic involvement, had apparently bypassed all normal channels, the general manager, the league office, to go straight to the top. The leaked account of the call was what sent a collective shiver through front offices everywhere. Cuban's message was framed not as a request, but as a statement of fact. He reportedly told the other owner, verbatim as leaked, "You have a problem. Your rookie put his hands on my franchise player in a malicious act after a series of disrespectful antics. The league will handle the suspension, but I'm telling you now, you need to handle him. If there is ever a repeat, if he so much as looks at Luka the wrong way again, the next call won't be to you.
It will be to every other owner about the liability of allowing a player with clearly unchecked behavior to share the court with the league's premier talents. You control your asset, or the collective will. The phrase, control your asset, echoed through the news cycles. It was cold, corporate, and dehumanizing in a way that fan arguments never were. This wasn't about basketball. This was about risk assessment and asset management. Cuban was framing Bronny not as a young man who made a mistake, but as a dangerous stock that could crash the market. The implied threat was a league-wide blackballing, a consensus among the owners that Bronny's presence posed a threat to their own multi-million-dollar investments. For an unproven rookie, even one with his name, it was a career-threatening proposition. The other owner's response was not leaked, which in itself was telling. Silence meant compliance. It meant the warning had been received and understood at the highest level. The reaction from the broader NBA community was one of stunned acknowledgement. This was an escalation beyond precedent. Players' union officials gave tight-lipped, no comment at this time statements, privately fuming at the asset language, but recognizing the nuclear stakes. Other team executives, speaking off the record, expressed a twisted sense of solidarity with Cuban. You have to protect your guy, especially when it's a guy like Luka, one GM said. Cuban went scorched earth, but he's sending a message to every team and every rookie. There are tiers in this league, and you do not cross that line. The story was no longer about a foul. It was about the unwritten caste system of the NBA, laid brutally bare by an owner's wrath. Meanwhile, inside Bronny's own franchise, a state of quiet panic had set in. The public relations team was in overdrive, but their hands were tied by the owner's directive. The coaching staff, who had been patiently developing the rookie, now had to confront a political storm. A veteran leader on the team, a respected figure with over a decade in the league, gave a telling interview. Look, rookies come in, they test boundaries, they get humbled. It's the circle of life, he said, choosing his words like he was navigating a minefield. But this is different. This isn't just getting yelled at by a coach or getting posterized by a vet. This is the whole machinery of the league turning its head and staring right at our locker room. We have to be smart. We have to help him be smart. The margin for error, he paused, just disappeared. And where was Bronny? He was a ghost. No social media activity, no sightings. He was reportedly at the team facility, but for extra film sessions and, tellingly, meetings with player development staff that focused on emotional control and professional conduct. The team announced he would be made available to the media after the league's disciplinary ruling, a clear attempt to control the narrative. But the narrative was already controlled by Mark Cuban. The league office, now under immense pressure from both the public spectacle and the seismic owner-on-owner confrontation, was forced to act swiftly. They reviewed the dossier from Dallas. They saw the same clip everyone else saw, but now they were also considering the stability of the league, the message sent to its stars, and the cold, hard reality of business relationships between billionaires. The suspension announcement came down 48 hours after the incident. Bronny James has been suspended for 3 games without pay for making excessive and unnecessary contact to the head area of Luka Dončić and for actions leading up to the altercation that were deemed detrimental to the game. 3 games. It was a significant sentence for a rookie, more than many expected for a non-punch. But everyone knew the real punishment wasn't the 3 missed paychecks or the 3 games on the bench. The real punishment was the final warning that now hung over his career like a sword of Damocles, its string held by the most unpredictable owner in sports. The league had made its ruling, but the true power had already been demonstrated. The game within the game was just beginning, and Bronny, isolated and under siege, was now playing on a field with rules he never knew existed.
Find an impact early in that first quarter.
Yeah, I'm always just trying to stay ready as much as I can, whether I'm playing in G or up here with the big guys. But just always trying to stay ready. We have stay ready games and practice and stuff like that. So I'm always ready to go at it and give my full effort.
I was just going to check on my phone, but did you see his...
Interesting quote by Mark Cuban this week on X that he says within 5 to 10 years, If a school teaches in a manner where answers by students.
The 3-game suspension was a line in the sand, but the tide kept coming in. The immediate aftermath within Bronny's own organization was a masterclass in quiet internal turmoil. Publicly, the head coach gave the standard, "We respect the league's decision. We've addressed it internally and we're focused on moving forward," statement. But the words rang hollow. Addressed it internally was the key phrase, and insiders painted a picture of a franchise scrambling to contain a crisis that had multiple fronts. The first front was the locker room. While the veteran who spoke publicly offered a measured tone, the private sentiment was reportedly more fractured. According to sources close to the team, a divide emerged. One faction, comprised of younger players and a few veterans who'd bonded with Bronny, felt he was being unfairly crucified, that the massive reaction was because of his last name, not his actions. They saw the owner's warning as an overreach, a bully tactic. The other, larger faction, particularly among the established stars and key role players, was frustrated. Their sentiment, as leaked, was pragmatic and cold. "We're trying to win games, make the playoffs, secure our futures. We don't need this noise. We don't need a target on our backs every time we play Dallas for the next 5 years." He brought a world of drama into this building that has nothing to do with basketball. The trust and cohesion a team painstakingly builds over a season had developed a hairline crack, and it was directly traced to one rookie's moment of lost composure. The second front was the business side. Sponsors and corporate partners who had been cautiously optimistic about the marketing potential of the James legacy story suddenly got nervous. One major athletic brand, which had Bronny in discussions for a potential ancillary deal, reportedly paused all conversations indefinitely. It wasn't about morality, it was about brand safety. The image had shifted overnight from inspiring comeback kid to liability. The franchise's own sales and marketing team had to recalibrate. Promotional material featuring Bronny was quietly pulled from rotation on social media and in-arena displays. It was a silent but profound demotion. He was no longer a featured attraction. He was a problem to be managed. And then there was the shadow that loomed over everything: LeBron James. His continued public silence was becoming its own roaring narrative. The absence was so deafening it spawned 1,000 theories. Was he letting his son face the fire alone as a harsh lesson? Was he orchestrating a behind-the-scenes counter-campaign? Was there a rift? The pressure finally broke in an unexpected way. At a post-practice media scrum for his own team, LeBron was inevitably asked about the incident. He stopped, turned to the reporter, and gave a response that was studied, paternal, and utterly devoid of his usual playful bravado. "As a parent, my focus is always on my family's well-being, on supporting my son through challenges," he said, his tone even. "He's a young man learning and growing in the brightest spotlight imaginable. He made a mistake. He's being held accountable by the league and by his team. Our job as his family is to love him, guide him, and help him learn from this so he can be better, as a player and as a man. The rest is just noise." It was a perfect, polished, and utterly neutral statement. It offered no defense, no attack on Cuban, no dismissal of Luka. It acknowledged the mistake and pivoted to family and growth. It was the sound of a king choosing not to go to war, but to fortify his castle. For some, it was a dignified response. For others, it was proof that even LeBron knew this battle was unwinnable, that the final warning had imposed a reality even he couldn't bend. The focus then shifted to the main protagonist of the drama, the one who had issued the warning. Mark Cuban, never one to shy from a microphone, was suddenly and uncharacteristically quiet on the matter. He declined all interview requests, his only comment being a terse, "The league handled its business. We've moved on." This was perhaps the most powerful move of all. By not gloating, not elaborating, he made the warning feel even more monumental. It was a fact of life now, like gravity. He didn't need to talk about it. Its existence was enough. Meanwhile, Luka Dončić, in his next media appearance, was back to his usual smiling self. When asked about the incident, he shrugged.
It's over. I have no problem with the kid. He served his suspension. On to the next game. The contrast was chilling. The star had forgiven. The owner had not. It clarified the hierarchy in stark terms. The players play the game, but the owners rule the kingdom. As Bronny served his suspension, watching his team play from the tunnel in street clothes, the question hanging over the entire league was simple. What happens next? The first game back would be a spectacle. The first game against Dallas would be a potential tinderbox. But more importantly, how does a player operate with a permanent scarlet letter pinned to his chest by one of the most powerful figures in the league? Does he play scared? Does he try to become invisible on the court, negating any aggression or edge that might make him effective? Or does the pressure forge something else entirely? The incident was over. The punishment was served, but the sentence, the life sentence of being under the microscope with a billionaire's warning label attached, was just beginning. The basketball world waited to see what version of Bronny James would emerge from the shadows, the chastened rookie, or a young man with a permanent and potentially dangerous chip on his shoulder.
I've been, sitting the bench in the G League, getting the reps, and stuff like that. So, just constantly putting that in my head that, they believe in me and that I can contribute.
Bronny, what expectations did you put on yourself in, say, training camp and preseason, and how does that square up with where you are at now, 5 months into your rookie season?
The day of Bronny's return was less a basketball game and more a cultural event. The arena was packed, the media scrums were triple their usual size, and the buzz was a palpable mix of anticipation and anxiety. Every eye was on him during warm-ups, scrutinizing his demeanor. Was he smiling? Was he sullen? Was he avoiding contact? He went through his routine with a focused, expressionless efficiency. The joy, the visible excitement of just being in the NBA that had marked his first games was gone, replaced by what seemed like the weight of the world. When his name was announced in the starting lineup, a clear show of faith, or perhaps defiance, from his coaching staff, the crowd reaction was a fractured symphony of boos and cheers, the sound of a narrative split right down the middle. From the opening tip, it was clear the game plan was to reintegrate him quietly. The first few plays were run away from him. He was a decoy, a spacer in the corner. He moved the ball quickly when it came to him, making no attempt to create. On defense, he was hyper-conscious, almost overly fundamental, avoiding any situation that could lead to a hard foul or a confrontation. For the first quarter, he was a ghost in plain sight. Commentators noted his disciplined and unselfish play, but the subtext was clear. He was playing not to lose, not to make a mistake. He was playing under the weight of the warning, and in a league built on instinct and aggression, that hesitation can be a death sentence. He missed his first 2 shots, wide open looks he'd normally take with confidence, because his release seemed just a half beat slow, as if his brain was running a risk assessment scan before allowing his muscles to fire. Then, midway through the second quarter, it happened. Driving baseline, he was net by the opposing team's veteran enforcer, a player known for his physical, no-frills defense. The defender bodied him hard, a clean but brutal contest. Bronny, off balance, crashed to the floor. The whistle blew. A no call. The defender stood over him for a split second, a look of pure, unchallenged dominance on his face, before turning to run back on defense. It was a moment of pure NBA hazing, a veteran testing a rookie he perceived as vulnerable. Last month, Bronny might have popped up, fired up, demanded the ball back. This time, he lay on the floor for an extra second, picked himself up without a word, and jogged back on defense, eyes down. The footage of that sequence, the hard foul, the dismissive stare, the silent acceptance, went viral before the quarter ended. The caption was brutal, the warning in action. Mark Cuban's message had been received not just by Bronny, but by every player in the league. He was now marked as a player you could challenge, physically and psychologically, with minimal fear of repercussion. The shield of his name had been replaced by a target. The game ended in a loss. Bronny's stat line was anemic: 2 points, 3 rebounds, 1 assist, 4 personal fouls. In his post-game press conference, he faced the music. He looked exhausted. "Just trying to help my team win," he said, repeating the phrase like a mantra.
"I'm grateful to be back, just focusing on the little things." When asked directly about the incident with the veteran enforcer, he paused, his jaw tightening almost imperceptibly. "It's a physical game. He made a good play. I've just got to be stronger." There was no fire, no edge. It was the sound of a player who had been professionally neutered. The analysts that night were divided. Some praised his maturity and newfound professionalism. Others diagnosed a deeper sickness. "He's playing with fear," one former All-Star said, bluntly, "and you cannot survive in this league with fear in your heart." Cuban didn't just get him suspended, he may have gotten inside his head in a way that changes his career trajectory. The question is this a temporary lesson or a permanent scar? The reaction from the broader player fraternity was telling. Anonymous players polled in a players' union survey about league pressure made references to the situation without naming names. When outside forces change how you play, that's a problem. A kid makes one mistake and suddenly he has to look over his shoulder for the rest of his career. That's not right, said another. But the support was couched in anonymity. No active star came out publicly to defend him. The risk of aligning against an owner's edict, even implicitly, was too great. The isolation was now complete. He had his family, his small circle within the team, and a mountain of scrutiny. The NBA had successfully policed the transgression, but in doing so, it may have extinguished the very competitive spirit that made Bronny a prospect in the first place. The return was not a redemption arc. It was the first chapter of a much more complicated and potentially tragic story of potential stifled by the immense, unforgiving power of the business.
Message to LeBron James about his son on First Take.
I'm really trying to be as respectful as I possibly can be towards LeBron James. One of the top 2 or 3 players in the history of basketball, number 2 in my eyes. A treasure to the game of basketball that we should and will all miss when he is gone. I am...
In the weeks that followed Bronny's muted return, the incident didn't fade. Instead, it calcified into a permanent part of the NBA landscape, a modern parable. For analysts and fans, the debate crystallized into 2 opposing philosophies. The first championed Mark Cuban's actions as necessary and righteous. This camp argued that the NBA's superstars are billion-dollar assets who must be protected at all costs from reckless behavior, especially from unproven players. Cuban didn't just protect Luka, argued a prominent sports business podcaster. He protected the value of his investment and sent a message to every team about the standard of conduct around Tier 1 talent. This is a business, not a playground. The final warning wasn't personal, it was a corporate risk mitigation strategy of the highest order. In this view, Bronny was a necessary sacrifice on the altar of league order, a lesson that would preserve the sanctity and marketability of its biggest stars. The second camp saw a dangerous overreach, a moment where the league's brutal power dynamics were exposed in a way that could have a chilling effect. Since when do owners get to issue personal decrees about the on-court behavior of another team's employee, wrote a veteran columnist. The league has a disciplinary system for a reason. By going around it and making a threat that implies collective owner action, Cuban crossed a line. He didn't just punish a rookie, he established a precedent that certain players are untouchable monarchs, and anyone who brushes against them does so at the peril of their career. This argument framed Bronny not as a villain, but as the first casualty in a new, more explicitly corporatized Cold War within the league, where player agency could be overridden by owner collusion. For Bronny's franchise, the long-term calculus began. They had a unique, immensely marketable asset whose development had just been complicated by a geopolitical-level conflict. Team insiders whispered about the Cuban factor now being a permanent line item in all future evaluations. Could they trade him? The potential return would be diminished as other teams would factor in the baggage and the unspoken blacklisting from one influential owner. Could they keep him? They would have to invest heavily in not just his basketball skills, but in a psychological and PR rehab project of unprecedented scale. Every aggressive play, every hard foul he committed or received would be analyzed through the lens of the final warning. He was no longer just a basketball player. He was an ongoing diplomatic incident. The most profound impact, however, was on Bronny James himself. The happy-go-lucky, social media-friendly rookie had vanished. His public persona became guarded, scripted, and quiet.
On the court, a subtle change was noted by keen observers. He began to develop a different kind of edge, not the reckless, emotional edge that led to the swipe at Luka, but a cold, calculated, almost surgical precision. He studied film obsessively. He worked on his offhand dribble for hours. He became a student of angles and positioning, aiming to beat defenders with IQ and skill, not brute force or aggression. In a few games, he began to show flashes of a new identity, not the highlight reel dunker, but the savvy, low-mistake, high-efficiency connector. It was as if he had decided that if the league had taken away his right to play with fire, he would learn to play with ice. The first rematch with the Dallas Mavericks, scheduled for late in the season, was already being circled on every calendar. It loomed as the ultimate test. Would he shy away? Would there be retaliation? Or would it be the most boring, professional, non-controversial game of all time, with both sides giving each other a 5-foot buffer? That game would be the true verdict on the effectiveness of the final warning. Did it create peace, or did it merely force a conflict into a deeper, more silent place? In the end, the saga of the final warning revealed a fundamental truth about the modern NBA. It is a league of dualities, family and business, passion and calculation, legacy and liability. Bronny James stepped into the league carrying the weight of a legendary legacy, but in one moment of frustration, he collided with the other, more powerful force, the cold, bottom-line logic of billionaire ownership. The warning wasn't just about him and Luka, it was a declaration of which of those two forces ultimately holds the power. The message was received, not just by one rookie, but by every player who dreams of challenging a king. You might beat him on the scoreboard, but off it, in the boardrooms where the real game is played, the Kings are protected by castles made of money and influence that no chase-down block can ever reach. So, what's the final score? Was Mark Cuban a visionary owner protecting his empire, or did he weaponize his power to crush a rookie's spirit in a way that changes the league forever? Does Bronny's path forward lie in embracing this new ice-cold persona, or will the pressure to live up to a legacy that's built on dominance ultimately force the real fire back to the surface? And the biggest question of all, when the next rookie inevitably tangles with the next superstar, will they think twice, remembering the story of the final warning, or will the cycle of pride and punishment just begin all over again? Let us know what you think in the comments below. Who was right, who was wrong, and what happens next? If you found this deep dive into the real drama behind the headlines as fascinating as we did, make sure you're subscribed and hit that notification bell, because in the NBA, the next controversy is just one play away, and we'll be here to break it all down for you.